Hello, hello, hello. This is Gresh from the I Am CEO podcast. I have a very special guest on the show today. I have Kvon Tucker of Consciously. Kvon, it's great to have you on the show.
Hey, thank you. Welcome. I'm happy to be here.
Definitely super excited to have you on. Happy to have you on as well too. And before we jumped into the interview, I want to read a little bit more about Kvon so you can hear about all the awesome things that he's doing. And Kvon is the CEO and founder of Consciously, a purpose-driven executive and leadership coaching firm. Kvon is also a professionally trained leadership and leadership development expert, and he has spent a third of his life dedicated to leaders, teams, and organizations learn, adapt, and transform. His favorite tagline is all I know is how to help people grow. And he has helped leaders at Netflix and Amazon adapt to hyper growth and tremendous scale through experiential learning and coaching. Today, he heads up manager and leadership development for Google's staffing organization, designed experiential learning and coaching leaders as they help Google grow. Kvon also holds a master's in industrial and organization philosophy and is a certified professional coactive coach. Kvon, great to have you on the show and hear about all the awesome things you're doing. Are you ready to speak to the IMCO community?
Yeah, happy to, man. Let's get into it.
Awesome. Well, let's do it then. So to kind of kick everything off, I wanted to rewind the clock a little bit, hear a little bit more on how you got started, what I call your CEO story.
Yeah, my CEO story. I like to tell people that it was kind of born out of a very, very difficult time. I was early in my career, maybe 5, 6 years into my career as a learning and development professional. And one day I woke up and I was kind of miserable. I realized that the work that I was doing wasn't really all that purposeful. It wasn't really meaningful. And I kind of gotten away from what I got into this line of work to do, which is to support people and connect with people. And so I went on my own little journey to reconnect with like what my purpose is and explore what my purpose is. And I landed on coaching. And I went into a coaching course looking for something that would feel a little bit more meaningful and purposeful for me. And I walked out feeling like I had found my life purpose. And so it's kind of at that point I knew that coaching was going to be something that I was going to do. And maybe a month later, I had founded Consciously with my wife and said, hey, you know what? Regardless of what goes on in my day job, I know that I need to coach. And so this is going to be the channel for me to do that. It's been a whirlwind, and so now coaching is a much more larger part of my life, and Consciously is growing. I'd say rather rapidly, not tremendously rapid, but it's growing. And in that whole journey, I've also kind of woven in this manager and leadership development aspect. So if you think about my background in industrial organizational psychology, the whole goal of us is to help organizations thrive and help people work better together. And when you think about how to do that in organizations, focusing on the manager community has been, I think, the greatest revelation of my career. I think they're one of the most important segments of an organization when you want to create change, sustainable change. And so helping managers be better managers and be better leaders, as well as coaching them to do so, is kind of where I've landed. So that's a little bit of my story in a nutshell.
Nice. I definitely appreciate you for sharing that. And the quote that was kind of coming to my mind when you were talking about sometimes it was a frustrating path that how everything came about was like it's always dark. It's sometimes darkest before dawn.
Yeah.
And I think so many times when we go through those frustrating moments, sometimes if we just kind of explore, see what kind of can come out the end of the tunnel, sometimes it's our greatest purpose and the thing that we ultimately should be doing, like it was in your case.
Absolutely, man. I look back now at that time as a gift. It was like a message saying, "Hey, you're not doing what you're here to do, what you're supposed to be here. It's like you're not spending your time in the ways in which you want. There's more for you out there." So for me, it was a note of like an opportunity for me to go look. And unfortunately, I found coaching, and I found manager and leadership development, and then I use Consciously as the channel to do that work.
Yeah, absolutely. So I wanted to drill down a little bit more, hear a little bit more about this channel that you're using. Could you take us through a little bit more on how you work with your clients and how that manifests itself?
Yeah. The number one way I work with my clients is one-on-one. So I consider myself a leadership and executive development coach. And what that looks like is usually I meet with them one-on-one, 50 to 60 minutes bi-weekly. I do have some one-on-one arrangements that are weekly. That's like if you're a leader and you like really want to grow very rapidly, then we might do a weekly thing. And in that 50 to 60 minutes, we do a number of things. One, we kind of center on what we're going to talk about, like what that leader wants to grow or what their challenge is. And then we spend about 80% of the time just exploring that topic, going really deep, getting in touch with what parts of themselves they want to develop, what does it look like? What does it feel like? What do they imagine the results would be like? So do some visualization. We do lots of different things within this 50, 60 minutes. And then the last 20% of the time we spend, or 10% of the time we spend landing on, an action. So it's never just like, hey, we're going to get together and talk about some fun, cool stuff. For me, coaching is a big part of coaching is action. Like, what are we going to do after we've done all this exploration, or what do you want to do? And whatever we come up with, it should be in service of that client's agenda or that client's want for their leadership development or for their executive development or just for their life. So yeah, just a little bit of finding the topic, exploring the topic, and then doing some action to further development around that topic.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. I love that action piece because it's so funny. I was gonna say that when you found coaching, it sounded like you took action in order to find it, and that's why it sounds like, I don't want to put words in your mouth, that the action piece is so important because you want to kind of have that forward momentum, especially when you're doing that inner work and that kind of conversation, so that you are kind of going in the right direction. Or even if you're not, at least you can take the action to pivot or change or do whatever. But action seems like it takes everything.
Yeah, it's a huge part of it. And the model that I'm training, as you noted, is coactive, which the co is kind of like being with, and that's the focus. And that's actually the biggest growth opportunity, I think, for leaders and senior leaders now is spending time being with the topic, being with the energy, being with the emotion.
Mm.
And then there's the active part. So it's like, hey, together we're going to move forward in this coaching. So you can't get good coaching without some action. But I actually spend a lot of my time helping leaders kind of just be with the topic. Because most people, most high performers, most senior leaders I meet, they just want to get right to the action. And they kind of forget that, hey, like we got to really sit with this. We got to really explore this. And we got to give this topic the energy that it deserves to build it and then use in our action.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that because I was actually just thinking that too as you were saying that. Usually, I'm sure like a lot of high performers are go, 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 that they don't really take the time to not go. So, creating that space for that to happen, I imagine, creates that really kind of transformational opportunity because we sometimes won't do it because we're always on the go, always want to hit the next, goal or whatever that might be.
That's it. That's honestly, that's where the biggest transformation is for most of the senior leaders that I coach, is to get them to pause and reflect and digest and ruminate and visualize. It's like visualization. There's a lot of research that shows the visualization is quite powerful. And so I have my clients do a lot of that. It's like, how do you want to look? Like, how do you want to feel when you do this? Like, what does it look like? What's the impact that you have on others? Getting people to really center on what they want and what the outcomes they want. And then it's like, okay, great. Now, what are we going to do to make that real? Right. And then you get the action. The action looks a lot different when you have spent some time just being with the topic.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think so many times, especially, leaders and as you said, mentioned managers and in those different stages, sometimes you're pulled in so many different directions. There isn't space held for you to have those opportunities to do that and to go through that exercise. So I appreciate you for doing that so
Yeah.
much.
Oh, I appreciate it, man. Appreciate it. I love this work. Love
Yeah,
it.
absolutely. It definitely sounds like it's exciting and definitely very impactful to say the least. And so I wanted to ask you now for what I call your secret sauce. And this could be for yourself personally or the business or a combination of both. But what do you feel kind of sets you apart and makes you unique?
Um, I'd say a couple of things. One is it's kind of my journey. Like many other people, I bring a lot of personal and professional experience into my coaching. So, there are a lot of coaches out there and a lot more coaches are getting certified and I have that as well. But what makes me different from someone who just found out about coaching last year and then got certified all of a sudden, is that my whole career has been dedicated to helping people learn and grow. I have 2 degrees in psychology. So I really understand human behavior. I really understand learning. Like that's been my whole career. And I bring that into my coaching. So I do a little bit of education around learning and development. I do some education around like sustainable behavior change that other coaches just can't because they don't have that background. So that's one aspect, is just kind of like my professional. And then there's my personal drive towards helping people find and fulfill their purpose. Consciously is founded and rooted on that. And I think that personal purpose and leadership purpose are like the most important things for people to achieve whatever they want to achieve. And it's our personal philosophy at Consciously that everyone's purpose is somehow tied to helping themselves and helping others do good for the world. And so I center all of my coaching around that. And it's just been my experience that when you start asking questions on it, what's important to you? What is your purpose? And you get someone to land on a purpose statement, it almost, I mean, say 100% of the time, it has something to do with helping other people. And so I love to center leaders around that, because I think if you can center more and more CEOs around finding and fulfilling their purpose, which ultimately is connected to elevating our species, then we can all do really great work together. So those are a couple things that make me a little bit different from other coaches.
Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that so much, especially, along the lines. I think so many times when you hear somebody's journey, you don't hear all of the aspects of that journey. So I appreciate you talking about the different ways and the different aspects that you've been able to kind of teach people and how that manifests itself. I imagine in different ways that you're doing it, even if it's like a new modality, so to speak. I imagine that you're not starting from zero because you have had such experience and such, time to kind of execute on your crafts. And I imagine too that, we can get lost in our lives and in organizations because we don't have that North Star, that purpose. And
Yeah.
to actually go through that exercise and be aware of what that is, I imagine it's an absolute game changer in most people's lives.
Man, I mean, it's why I do this work. There's two things that typically happen when I coach someone who's maybe not as effective in their organization or as effective in the world as they want to. One thing is they end up changing jobs. So I've coached a lot of leaders out of their jobs, and that's not what I sign up for. But that happens sometimes when people get clear, like, oh, actually, this is what's really important to me. So let me just go do that. The other thing, which I think is even maybe more beautiful, is someone might not be as effective in their role as they want to be, and then they develop their purpose, and then they find a new way to relate to the work that they're doing, a new way to bring in a different part of themselves or more of themselves, and they end up feeling like they're a much more authentic leader doing the same work but doing it in a different way. And then you start to see things happen for them in different kinds of ways. So it's an amazing process to witness people finding their purpose and fulfilling it in ways in which they never imagined they could. Like someone's like, many leaders have come to me like, okay, I'm ready to quit my job. And then we do some purpose work, and they're like, actually, I love what I do. And it's just
Mhm.
about these parts of myself that I've left behind and haven't really been bringing into the work that I've been doing today.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. And I don't want to, put words in your mouth, but I almost feel like because sometimes we're so close to it, or as we talked about high performers, sometimes we're go, go, go all the time. We don't have that space that a lot of times it takes, having a conversation, holding that space as you do. And of course, your expertise to be able to bring those things to light where it might be completely in alignment with what we're doing. Or if it's not, we have an opportunity to kind of pivot and change too.
That's exactly it. I mean, my own personal experience is I got into learning and development because I wanted to help people grow, and then over time, you just get kind of stretched in these different directions, and you kind of lose your purpose a little bit,
Mm.
right? And that is a super common experience where people got into something with clear intentions and purposeful intentions, and then they grew, or they started a business, or they developed in their career, and they climbed the ladder, and then they just got further and further away from their purpose. So what I hope help leaders do is reconnect with that purpose. And so again, sometimes that means a new opportunity, or sometimes that means starting your own business, or sometimes that means just changing the way that you're doing your job today.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate you for doing that work because it's so valuable and necessary, because I think that, as you said so well, a lot of times when we can get in that purpose and we can execute and be in alignment with that purpose, it creates that impact for not just ourselves, but our societies, the world. It creates those win, 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 win opportunities.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's a beautiful kind of virtuous cycle that I
Hmm.
see happen all the time with leaders across the world. Is we end up settling on, hey, you know what? Like what's important to me is actually what helps society, and that's ultimately the work that I want to be helping other leaders do at scale.
Yeah, absolutely. I could just envisioning those huge domino that are falling and falling over just because you're able to kind of make that impact to each of the different leaders. And so
That's the goal.
I wanted to switch gears a little bit, and I wanted to ask you for what I call a CEO hack. So this could be like an app, a book, or a habit that you have, but what's something that makes you more effective and efficient?
Yeah. Yeah, it's like I knew this question was coming, and I know you're wanting something that might be a little bit different, but I don't. And I honestly, I've listened to your podcast a little bit, so I know that this isn't all that unique. And it's the honest truth is really owning your mornings. I am religious about how I design my mornings and how I adhere to my mornings. And I'm one of those people who like serve themselves, so it's meditation, it's writing, it's exercise, it's eating good food. Like I do all the things that are supremely important to sustaining me and sustaining my energy before I do anything else. a new father, so some of that stuff is kind of like not the same as it was before I became a dad. So I'm getting some of that stuff back, but my mornings are, I'm religious about them. So like I said, I do 15 minutes of writing before I go to the gym. I always go to the gym, and then I come back and I shower, and then I do 15 minutes of meditation, kind of depending on the day. I make sure I eat a good solid breakfast, and then I start my day. And it's something, some combination of that has been life changing for me when it comes to being able to sustain the work that I'm doing.
Yeah, and I love that phrase that you use, serving yourself, because I think so many times we forget, especially when we're giving of ourselves, I should say, to so many people and, clients and family and just so many different things. We can sometimes forget about that, but that sustainability that you talked about, it doesn't happen if you can't really make sure your cup is full as well too, so that you can
Absolutely.
give from your saucer. But so it's so important to kind of do that. And I love kind of making sure that you do that at the beginning of the day, because if you wait till the end of the day, sometimes it kind of gets away from you.
Yeah, that's what I've learned. I was one of those people who would have told you I wasn't a morning person.
Mhm.
Um, Note to anyone out there: you can become a morning person if you want to. Right? It's going to take somewhere, and this is something I work with my clients on. Many of my clients say I'm not a morning person, and we work on it and we get a behavior change. It takes time to get there, but you can. And I learned that for me to do what I want to do, I have to serve myself first in the morning. So I had to become a morning person, and I have, and I love it. Now I love waking up in the mornings. There's like something really special about having that alone time in the morning to serve yourself that I cherish now. I cherish, but I wasn't always this way.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you for sharing that, because people might be listening saying, "Oh, well, I'm not a morning person, so I can't necessarily do that." But I'm a big believer in like creating, like, I guess, winning habits, so to speak. And if you are
Yeah.
able to kind of course create, it doesn't happen like a light switch. Like, okay, today I'm a night now, now I'm a morning person. It happens. It sounds like over time.
Over time, yeah. It's and this is when I talk about habit change that I help my clients with. It could be, okay, you know what, I want to wake up at 5 in the morning. Well, when are you waking up now? 7. Okay, well, let's start with 6:30. Right?
Mhm.
It's like, let's not jump from 5 to 7. That's not setting you up for success. Let's start with 6:30 and add one of these things that you want to do in the morning. We build that muscle, and then it's like, okay, maybe 6 o'clock, and we can add one more thing that you want to do in the morning. And the next thing you know, 6 months, 12 months later, you're a morning person waking up at 5, but you have this muscle built. And I find that just many leaders, they don't give themselves the opportunity to develop the muscles to build the life that they want. They often will jump overboard without the muscles, and then they drown, and then they give up. I'm not a morning person. So anything, this is, a large part of what I do as a change agent in leaders, is help people develop those habits that they want to, but helping them build these habits in a way that's going to set them up for success rather than, jumping off the deep end.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's where a lot of times those I won't, I don't know how to kind of come from, because you try to jump into the deep end. It doesn't go successfully. But if you gradually progress towards that, then it provides that opportunity.
Yeah, and that's transformation for some people. It's like it
Mhm.
could be transformational to go from waking up at 7 a.m. to go to waking up at 6:30 on a consistent basis, right? Like just that 30 minutes can be huge for people. It's like, oh, I got 30 minutes just to like have a coffee by myself or have a coffee with my loved one, or whatever it is that you want to do. That can be huge in people's lives.
Yeah, absolutely. Or as we talked about, tackle the morning as well too, getting yourself set up for that success. It could be an absolute game changer to your day, your week, your month, and so on and so forth. You create
Yeah.
domino effect. And so I wanted to ask you now for what I call a CEO nugget. So you might have already touched on this, but this is kind of a word of wisdom or piece of advice. It might be something you would tell a client, or if you hopped into a time machine, you might tell your younger business self.
Mm, yeah, that's a good one. This might seem a little different, but I would say be easy on yourself. And that might sound odd coming from someone who's like started a business, has a growing business, and also works full time and is a parent and is a husband. But I have found that self compassion is probably it's like the secret key to life that no one told me about until I was like in my mid 30s. Um, yeah, be easy on yourself. I mean, if you're an entrepreneur and you have your own business, you're already an ambitious person, right? And so you can like lean on that ambition. Don't forget it, but also don't forget that beating yourself up to achieve more and grow faster is actually not going to get you there. And I know it seems a little counterintuitive for folks, and it was counterintuitive for me for years to think that being gentler and kinder to myself would actually help me achieve more. But after years of practicing that myself and helping other leaders practice self-compassion, it's been proven that being gentler and kinder actually can help pave the way for you to achieve more and grow faster. So I would say if you want a secret golden key that most people aren't talking about for entrepreneurs or business owners, self-compassion will change your life. And if you ever want to talk about that, feel free to contact me because I love to talk about self-compassion.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate you for sharing that. It's so funny because this past year I was saying, my word after the pandemic and everything was giving yourself grace, because I think so
That's
many
it.
times we can beat ourselves up. But I love that self-compassion word, word even more, because I think that so many times we forget, and working and wanting to get to a certain level will beat ourselves up because we're not at that level. And we could take that energy and put it in a more positive way, or we could put that energy towards whatever solution we're trying to solve. But beating ourselves up is not going to necessarily move that needle forward. So we have to
Mm-mm.
kind of understand that and give ourselves that self compassion.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think grace is a form of self-compassion. So I would have to 100% agree with you. I think grace is a beautiful thing if you can give yourself that and you give yourself space to breathe and space to grow, right? When you're kind of down on yourself, you're working with limited room. So when you breathe self-compassion and space into your environment, you give yourself room to meet the challenges that you want to meet. And it's also just a more enjoyable experience than being mean to yourself. So there's that too.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I saw something on, I don't know if it was on Instagram or something, where it's along the lines that a lot of times if we write down what we tell ourselves, we wouldn't want to hang around that person, but yet we tell ourselves that on a regular basis. So to check what we're saying to ourselves and give ourselves that self-compassion is something that is good, because it'll make us want to be around ourselves as well too.
Yeah, yeah, and that's what we need, especially if we have businesses that depend on us.
Yeah.
It's important for us to be kind to ourselves, and then that's like this is a leadership thing too. It's like if you're mean to yourself, like how do you think you're acting to other people? And if you're a
Right.
leader who lacks self compassion, what does that mean for the culture that you're creating in your organization? Right, and that's the conversations that I love to have with leaders.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I definitely appreciate you for holding space to do that. And so I wanted to ask you now my absolute favorite question, which is the definition of what it means to be a CEO. And we're hoping to have different quote unquote CEOs on the show. So, Kayvon, what does being a CEO mean to you?
You know, I think being a CEO is the same as being a change agent in society. You know, I think if you're a CEO, you're leading the way in some meaningful way, some material way. So it doesn't mean, making a whole lot of money. It doesn't mean that you have to have a whole bunch of employees. I think being a CEO means you are leading the way and you're responsible for the change that you want to create. And then you might have people under, you might have hundreds, tens, thousands, it kind of depends on where you're at, but you are leading the way. And it's important for you to own that and then, build the team that's going to support this change that you want to create.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the most beautiful things about entrepreneurship is a lot of times you see like an opportunity or something not being done or something not being fulfilled, and you want to create that change. So I love that change agent piece, because I think so many times when we take ownership of that and we start to take the actions, of course, create the space so that we are actually evaluating that and know our purpose, as you do so well, it creates that forward momentum that can truly, create that change that we hope to see in our organizations and our businesses and in our lives.
Absolutely. That's it. Yeah, I agree 100%.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Well, Kayvon, truly appreciate that definition. And I appreciate your time even more. What I wanted to do is just pass you the mic, so to speak, just to see if there's anything additional that you can let our readers and listeners know. And of course, how best they can get a hold of you and find out about all the awesome things that you're working on.
Yeah. Well, first, thank you very much for this time. I'm happy to share a little bit more about what's important to me and the work that I'm doing at Consciously. If you want to find me, the best way to find me is to look me up on Kvon Tucker on LinkedIn, or you can find me on Instagram, which is at consciously_Kvon is another way to find me. You can also go to consciously.one or consciously one, which is my website. You can find more information there, or reach out to us if you would like to work together. But yeah, for me, I just want to say thank you. And for anyone out there who's listening, if you're thinking about doing something big or becoming a CEO or already CEO, or you have an idea for society, I would encourage you to think about what is your purpose. And if you don't have an answer for that, then I'd say start to look for that answer. I just think that this is the most important work that we can be doing as CEOs, as entrepreneurs, is figuring out what is our purpose here, and then using our businesses as channels to achieve that purpose.
That's extremely powerful. I truly appreciate that, Kayvon. We will have the links and information in the show notes as well, too, so that everybody can follow up with you. But so powerful just to kind of remind ourselves of, the power that we have within to be change agents, as we talked about, and how we can use our businesses as the channels, the conduits to make that happen. But it really takes and goes to a different level when we are aligned with our purpose and what that looks like and how we can create space for us to evaluate that. So thank you so much for taking some time out. Thank you so much for the work you do. And I hope you have a great rest of the day.
Thanks. Thank you. Thank you very much.